Hello friends, we're back a year later. It's 2024 and I posted my AO3 recommendations last year around this time also. Honestly, I don't know what I was expecting, but you guys left so many nice comments of just like your recommendations, and that's literally my favorite thing ever. So thank you. And I don't know if anyone cares, but I did receive some comments saying that you would like to see an updated version, so here we are. Quick disclaimer, once again, I do not ship any of the members with each other. This is just fiction, and that's it. The girls who get it. That's all I'm gonna say. And if you're watching this video, you probably get it, so I don't have to go into that. But yeah, there's no shipping here, there's just good stories and good writing. But yeah, let me know if this is fun, if you like care. Like the last video, we're gonna go through categories. Most of these are fluff. Hey, it's not my fault. It's not my fault that I crave warm, soft stories, okay? Okay. So the first one is such a heavy hitter, you guys don't even know. You don't even know. Unless you read it, then you know everything about it. It's called Like Everything Glows by Annie V. If you're in this AO3, especially with BTS, you know, you've heard of Annie V, okay? You probably read some stories from Annie V, and if you haven't read Like Everything Glows, oh my god. I'm so excited for you. This is by far my favorite story of hers ever. So it's a Jimin and Jungkook story. Jungkook is an aquatic veterinarian, okay? So in the story, he goes on walks down the beach to like clean up or whatever, and in one of his walks he finds a merman, Jimin. I know I might be losing some of you. Don't, I promise, just stick with me. Overall, this story is just so incredibly sweet and endearing that it literally makes me angry. Jungkook is trying to help Jimin because he's wound up on the beach and he's a little injured. As the good-hearted person that Jungkook is, he takes Jimin to his home and he's like trying to like take care of him. Jimin doesn't know anything about humans, so he's practically like learning everything from Jungkook, and he's a little awkward because obviously he doesn't know like human mannerisms or like any like human concepts. They're just trying to learn about each other, and it's so sweet. And Jungkook's so patient and so kind, and I cannot express the amount of warmth and fuzziness this brought into my life. I swear you need to read this if you haven't. The author Annie also linked a soundtrack, like a playlist of sorts, and his name is Oliver Arnold's, right? And she recommends readers to read along while listening to the music, and I swear to you, please do so, because if this were a movie, I don't know, everything that Oliver Arnold creates is so perfect for Like Everything Glows. It just sets the scene, it sets the vibes. Somehow it's like so like ocean vibes. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Fruit vibes, twinkle twinkle.
It's such a feel-good story. Like, I want to talk more about it, but I don't want to spoil anything. And there's a second part which you need to read. Like, it's impossible not to read it after Like Everything Glows. It's called Like the Sun Came Out by Annie V. Please read it. It's like an epilogue, but not really an epilogue. Honestly, it might be like one of my favorite stories that I read last year. And that's what we're starting with. So moving on. Next, we have, I think this is pretty well known in like the BTS sphere. It's A Gilded World by Mise. It's a Jin and Yoongi fic. And here Jin and Jungkook are brothers. They're a part of this really like good, well-known like upper class family. But his family wants to marry off his little brother Jungkook. And he's like, that's my little brother. He's literally like super young. No, I'm gonna try and get us a better offer for an arranged marriage, right? This is Jin. He's like, I'm gonna try to find something better so that way you don't mess with my brother. And they're like, yeah, as if you could like score anything like better marriage than we could set up Jungkook with, right? And then that's where he meets Yoongi, and Yoongi is part of a, I don't know if I'm doing this right, Tebo family, who knows, but he's like crazy rich. It has Sundere Yoongi, which is basically like another word for like, oh, you think they're mean and cold and whatever, and they brush you off, but they're actually like a huge softie on the inside. Yeah, it's that type of Yoongi with Jin, and obviously he's Jin, so he's gonna be super upbeat and totally not what Yoongi was expecting, right? It's so soft. I can see why people put it and rank it as the Yoongi and Seokjin fic. I see it. Okay. So it is super soft. It will have you kicking your feet. Yeah, blanket kick for real. The trope is a classic arranged marriage. Maybe it's been overdone, but it's still a good story. Next, we have Stories Above Concrete by Annie V again. It is a Jimin and Jungkook AU, where Jungkook gets involved in an accident and he loses part of his memory. I think he just remembers up until like his university years, and then that's it. That's where it kind of like cuts off. And so here he struggles with social anxiety and just interacting with anyone that he didn't know prior to his accident. And that's when a new neighbor comes into his apartment complex. He moves in, and who is that new neighbor? It's obviously gonna be Park Jimin. It's so obvious. It's so obvious to the readers, obviously, that they like each other and that they're developing feelings for each other. But it just starts off like as friends to, or strangers to friends to lovers, and it's so cute. If you love slow burns, you're gonna love this one because it will have you kicking your feet, dude. The relationship between Yoongi and Jungkook is also super sweet because Yoongi is just a big bro. He's just like wants to take care of Jungkook at all costs, and Jungkook is just trying to adapt to his new life. Your mind will be working overtime. Next, I just be talking, dude. Next one is If Love Was a Person by Humble Start 1. Okay, so this one is a Jungkook, and also if you see me staring over here, it's because my computer's here and I literally have notes. That's how serious I am. Jungkook and his brother own a paragliding, skydiving business, and in it he gets involved in he gets involved in a tragic accident that kind of has him critically injured. And this story is very Me Before You coded. If you've seen Me Before You, it gives off that same vibe where Jungkook gets very like bitter and just lashes out because of like everything that's happened to him and everything he's going through. But it's definitely less sad and has a lot of smut that isn't in Me Before You. Until he meets Park Jimin. Jimin is the owner of Serendipity Wellness Center. I love how every story, like if they need a name for a business, they will put, and it's a Jimin story, they're gonna put Serendipity whatever. Serendipity Wellness Center. So he's very like a yoga master. He offers Jungkook physical and mental like different journeys to like self-heal and stuff. So it's more angsty towards the beginning, but it definitely gets lighthearted more towards the end. I would recommend it. Next, we have Fake Sugar by Minverse. This story is a Jungkook and Jin AU, and this one was funny. I really like this one. So Jungkook is super rich, but he's super awkward. And Jin is a competitive eater, and Jungkook works at a hedge fund, so the office space and environment is kind of toxic. No, it's actually really toxic. But they pick on Jungkook constantly because he doesn't participate in the office culture that they have, and in it they have a lot of like sugar babies, and it's a symbol of like wealth or whatever, power. It's like a power move, I guess you could say. So here Jungkook meets Seokjin at a bar, and he very awkwardly and very politely asks him to pretend to be his sugar baby. This sounds so weird, but I swear it's funny. It's good. It was super funny. Like, I found that the dialogue wasn't cringy or like too corny. It actually had me like laughing most of the times just because it was just funny. It was lighthearted, whatever. Jungkook is such a green flag. He's so soft, for Jin, it's actually insane. It reminds me a little bit of their dynamic in Chair Advice, a story I recommended last video. Yeah, some of the scenes literally made me scream. It was so fluffy, so warm, so soft. I would recommend it. Okay, next we have, it's still under fluff because it's very much fluff coated, but this kind of starts my little like downward spiral towards reading Chef Min Yoongi fics. The next one is Gusto de Italia by AmeliaBedelia. So it's a Jungkook and Yoongi AU. Yoongi is head chef at this restaurant, and Jungkook wants to be a chef one day, but he wants to be able to go to culinary school. But because of life and circumstances and whatnot, it's just very hard for him. But he meets Yoongi, and Yoongi is so, what's the word again? Tsundere. He's like scary because he's head chef and he like orders everyone around and bosses everyone around, but that's not the case. It's just misunderstood, and Jungkook obviously finds that out, and they become friends, and then they become more than friends, and it's so cute, I swear. Next we have Cleaning Clamshells, Raising Children, and Falling in Love by softarchive. This story, so this is again a Yoongi and Jimin AU, and here Jimin works at a restaurant where he's a kitchen hand, and he's not a chef, nothing. He doesn't want to go to culinary school or anything. He just wants a job, and he gets a job at this restaurant. But it's not until Jimin's family gets into an accident that he has to now take care of his 4-year-old niece, whose name is Maddie, and she's the cutest thing. Now he's the sole provider for this child, and he's just trying to juggle like life as a single parent, but also life as like the person that he was before the accident happened. And there he gets the help by the person he least expected. Who could it be? It's Yoongi. It's so soft. The relationship that Yoongi has with this fictional child is insane. It's so tender and warm and like gentle and soft. Oh my god. The slow burn in the story is real. It's real. You have to wait in there, you have to hang on, but it's gonna be so worth it because it's so sweet and so endearing. I highly recommend this one. It's one of my favorites as well. Next up, we have Mise by Adelagia. I don't know. Mise Okay, this is the story that I just read. I literally finished the story like last night. And it was so good. So it's a Jimin and Yoongi AU again. This is the last Chef Min Yoongi story that I have for you guys. So, but it does not miss. Okay, stay with me. Obviously Chef Yoongi again, but this time Jimin is going to participate in a cooking show / competition thing that's being aired on TV. Part of it is that they obviously have judges that, critique their food, and people get eliminated every week and whatever. And in there, he already has like preconceived notions about Yoongi because he's like, I watch the show all the time, and he's always the one that like is super cold to the contestants. He just seems like the Simon Cowell of the judge panel, if you will. But then he goes on the show and realizes that he is so nice and kind, and basically the opposite of everything that he thought he was. The little interactions that he has with Yoongi are so soft. Okay, it had me silently screaming in the middle of the night because of how cute their interactions were. I was screaming, crying, throwing up. Do you understand what I'm saying? The interactions were so small, so subtle, but they were so impactful. It kind of like, it would be the equivalent of Pride and Prejudice, that scene with like the hand, and the girls just get it. They get it because they're like, oh my god, they get wrecked. That was me with this story. And I read it super quickly. Honestly, the plot is so good. It flows so well that you kind of just keep reading and reading because you're just like, I want to know what happens next, and I want them to interact more, and it's a slow burn, but it's so worth it. Also, it wasn't predictable. Like, there was a lot of like key plot points that she could have hit, but no, everyone was super chill, everyone was super nice, and like it wasn't super like cliche. If I were to rank them of like cooking the cooking stories, there's 3 of them. I feel like this would be my favorite. It was something that I didn't know that I needed in my life, but here you go. 3 different Chef Yoongi fics. And if you have more, please comment them, I beg. Now that we're finally done with our fluff category, we're gonna go into action, and we only have one. We only have one for this one, and it's literally like the most, I feel like, talked about story, BTS story on AO3, or at least it was. I've heard of it, and I've heard of it since like 2018. Haven't read it because I was a little scared, to be honest, because of everything that people would say about it. So yeah, I was like, it's not gonna go anywhere, like I'm just gonna save it for a rainy day. The first story that I read at the start of the year, you don't even know what story I'm talking about. It's House of Cards by Sugamins. Yeah, so this one is slightly controversial just because there's some people who think it's a little bit too much. But like, have you read any other like gang AU out there? It's like, it's sort of the same thing. This story is not for the weak-hearted, okay? You cannot go in there thinking this is gonna be fluff, because it's not. Okay, let me just preface this. It is not. It is in the action category, but it might as well be in the angst category, because the things that this story made me feel are insane. After I read the story, I just felt numb. I felt like a gaping hole in my chest. And if you've read the story, maybe you can maybe you know what I'm talking about, but like, I have never felt that emotionally affected by a story before. And this is the type of story that you will think of months after you finish it. The writing is out of this world. This is the type of story where, you know, like on Twitter there's like threads of there's like fan fiction that I've read that is better than just the classics, that is just written better than the classics. Honestly, I would put this one up there. Jungkook, so the pairings, I guess, Jungkook and Taehyung, but also Jungkook and Jimin, but at the same time Jungkook, Jimin, and Taehyung. And I know that sounds insane, but just stay with me, okay? This is what they have on their AO3 page, and I'm just gonna read it because it's simple, to the point, and it's, yeah. Jungkook is the heir to a mob empire, the most notorious in the whole of Seoul. Taehyung is a rookie sent in to infiltrate by his select team and bring the empire crumbling down. Again, this story is very graphic. Very graphic scenes of violence, disturbing themes, blood and gore, and everything in between. You need to read the tags. This one you have to. There's no, you just need to read them and make sure that you're okay, yeah, I acknowledge it. Kind of like how a website or you accept the terms and conditions. Cool, got it. The action scenes were insane. It was like I was watching a thriller, an action movie in real time while I was reading the story. I would be reading, but my mind would just be I just knew what was happening, and I could clearly envision everything that the author was writing. And I love when that happens, dude. It's so vivid. It felt like I was watching a movie, and the character development was insane, okay? From everyone, from every character, I feel like, but especially Taehyung. But Taehyung is an undercover cop, okay? He's a rookie, and Namjoon, I think, is the head of the team, and he says, you know what? We know who we're gonna send. We know who we're gonna send to infiltrate this mob empire, to be an undercover cop and try to get us enough information that we can successfully bring this whole empire down, okay? Namjoon's Taehyung would be perfect for this. He's smart, he has good looks, he's attractive, which would make him much more likable towards the boy. And the boy in the story is Jungkook, because he is the one that's going to be taking over this whole mob, this whole empire that his dad has built, okay? You're on the edge of your seat constantly because you're oh my god, are they suspicious of him? Do they know? Do they not know? And at the same time, you see Taehyung go from an innocent person, you know, he loses his innocence. And I'm not saying that childlike innocence, no, I'm saying that as humanity. Yeah, he starts to lose his humanity after every single thing he's constantly put through to show his loyalty towards the boy, okay? And you kind of become doubtful of him at times. The author puts you in the same position as Taehyung, where you're kind of like, wait, I'm kind of getting attached, even though these are the bad guys, and we know those are the bad guys. But what do we do now? Who do we show loyalty to? And then at the same time, you also feel sort of bad about Jungkook and his situation, because he was born into this life, and the things that he had to go through, similar to Taehyung, it's like his environment made him who he is now. And even though he does some sick and twisted things, you're kind of just like, he was made to be like that though. But despite everything, I highly recommend it, despite the emotional turmoil that it put me through. Well, the next category is fantasy. We have 2 stories here. The first one is Park Jimin's Guide to Good Housekeeping by Ashlyn17. I saw a few of you comment on my last video recommending it. So I had literally just read it, or I was in the process of reading it, and I saw people commenting on it, and I was like, yes, you're one step ahead of me. This is a story, a Jimin and Jungkook story, where Jimin is a brownie. That's the term, I guess, and it's basically like housekeeper. It's like a fairy type thing. Jimin is sent to work for quote unquote the nightmare. That's how people know him, and the nightmare is Jungkook. It's very much Beauty and the Beast vibe. They're kind of like enemies to lovers. It's very whimsical. It's very like heavy rooted in fantasy and like superpowers and just like magic. It's a good read, and it will have your brain working overtime as well. Next is What Lies Below by Sharleena. Sharleena, we know her, we love her. He did Yukio, right? It's a Jimin and Yoongi fic, and this is where Yoongi was born under a blood moon. What does that mean? Well, basically his town wants to sacrifice him. They basically want to feed him to the forest, because that's something that they do to maintain their crops and maintain their lives and whatever. So he's forced to be sacrificed to the forest, and there he meets the forest spirit, who is Jimin. And it has a lot of horror themes, and it has a good plot. It has a good little spooky vibe. It's not super scary or anything, it just kind of has those undertones to it, but I really enjoyed the story. I would recommend it 100%. It has a lot of those fantasy themes to it too, so I think you guys would like it too. Our next category and our final category of the night is angst. The first one is Not Crying on a Sunday by A Bucket of Chicken. That is their name. This is a Yoongi and Jimin AU, where Yoongi lives in this small town. It's very coming of age coded. Jimin moves into the town, so he's the new kid on the block. High school vibes, if you're into that. It did have some like little grammar issues, but if you can just overlook that, you'll be fine. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, you're describing this as such a sweet little coming of age story, a little small town. Why is it under angst? Just read it. It's like very much yearning what Jimin thinks is unrequited feelings. Next story is And I Still Drown with Your Name on My Lips by Anuntiaso. The story is literally just like 2 chapters, so it's not even like, it's not crazy long, but it is sort of long within the chapters, if that makes sense. So it's a Jungkook and Yoongi fic. This story, guys, is literally poetry. The author who wrote this had me like stunned. I was like, ma'am, what are you doing here on AO3? Like, this is literally poetry. It was so HYYH coded. Okay, I'm gonna play scenes from HYYH while I describe the prompt, okay, for this story specifically. So it says, University AU, where Jungkook meet in an acquaintance party, and Yoongi actually has a partner, but gets confused when he ended up hanging out with Jungkook more than expected. And Jungkook silently liking Yoongi because he knows he's in a relationship. Oh my gosh, the yearning, guys. The pure yearning in the story was insane. It was a continuous story, but it's not like how usually like stories are structured. So like, you know how in a story you're kind of just like, this happens and then the next day this happens. There's a lot of gaps in between it. Not that there's like gaps in the plot, but like you won't follow one scene for too long, if that makes sense. More like focused on how it makes Jungkook feel, so more like internally processing things instead of like what's happening externally. Yeah, I have 2 excerpts from this story just to like highlight how good, because there's only like 17 comments or something on one of these, and I was like, because I have 2 from the same author, these last 2 ones were from the same author, and I'm like, how? Because your writing is literally excellent. First one is, and I quote, "You're amazing," Jungkook wants to tell him. "Your music makes me want to dance with all the ghosts that I've been running from. You're going places. You're going to make places." But all his thoughts are wound over under habitual hesitance. The fear that he will touch a nerve, upset the sensitive balance between them, make them go back to 2 people on 2 sides of a door that will never open. This one says, and I quote, "He wonders if one day it will be okay to tell Yoongi about the time it had rained in June, and Yoongi borrowed an umbrella from Jungkook and forgot to give it back, and how some days Jungkook sees the way he still has it in his cupboard, the way he brings it out sometimes like it's his, like it's something he owns, like Jungkook has slipped into the cracks of his life and he hasn't even realized, and that the way that makes Jungkook's heart ache." Anyway, I highly recommend that one for inks. Now, last but not least, I have, like I said, another one from the same author. "I didn't know what tenderness was until you touched me for the first time," by Anuntiaso. Sorry. So it says, "Jungkook and Taehyung are strangers who meet on the bus with nothing in common except the fact that they are both boys who love other boys, and how that just might be the scariest thing in the world. A sudden conversation is all it takes to bridge the gap between vulnerability and strength." So it's just like strangers coming together and like having this conversation that like literally turns their whole lives around. So like this story wasn't sad, but it made me feel like bittersweet. It gave me vibes of like the Japanese word sonder, which is like the realization that each random passerby is living a life that is as vivid and complex as your own. They're just on a bus together and they're talking about how like they both love, you know, different people and the relationship that they have with each other, and it's so sweet and again so poetic. It's a one shot and it's literally classic poetry in the form of story. So there, I leave you with that. That is my final story that I have to recommend. Once again, I hope you can at least take one story that you haven't read and that you hopefully will like in the future. Yeah, comment if you've read any of these or if you have any recommendations for me, and whether you care whether I should keep making these videos or if I should just like stop. I'm still gonna read stories, but I find that this is fun and it's fun to talk about it, and it's fun to find other people who have read the same stories or that have recommendations for me. So that's it. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day and have a good start to the year. You know, that's it for me. Bye.